Okay, everybody, today we're going to be servicing a DeWalt D55146 electric 4.5 gallon air compressor model, well, I'm sorry, type 4. The model's D55146. We're going to replace the brushes in this one as they've worn out. I've already removed the covers and tore it down because I had to do troubleshooting to find out what the problem was with it. I found the brush problem, and that's what we're going to replace today. Procedurally, this is pretty straightforward. We're going to move the brushes back to... we're going to free the spring to move the brushes out. So I started by sticking the pick here in between the commutator and the brush and pushing the brush up because it was so far worn I couldn't see the end of the spring. So I'm pushing up on it. I'm pulling on the end of the brush's wire. Probably not the best idea, but there really was no way to get that spring free. So I'm going to get it up enough where I can get a pick in it. I'm going to use the pick to pull the spring up into the top, and I keep the pick in it so the spring doesn't return. In the instructions, they tell you to use a toothpick, but I happen to have metal picks, so that's what we're going with. Okay, so right now I'm just kind of moving this brush. It's a little worn at the end and kind of mushroomed, so it doesn't want to slide up this brass brush holder real easily. But I'm going to get it moving here. You're going to have to fight with it and pull if you're as worn as these are. I free it. I'm going to move the spring up gently because you don't want to break it, and free the brush. And there's the brush. Now on this model, you're going to have to cut the brush free. It's not a connector. So as you see, I'm just going to clip it. I tried to save as much of the commutator wire by cutting off the actual metal ferrule and trying to pull the connector apart. It doesn't work. Just save yourself the grief. Cut it as close to the connector as you can and be done with it. As you see what I'm doing here, I'm just going to clip it off. At some point here, I'll cut that off. I'm still trying to save it. And it's going to, I think, break in my hand. I'm like, nope, time to cut it. Yeah. So I think I already broke it off, so I'm going to just straighten it out with some pliers. There's a little curl in it from me fighting with it. So we're just going to straighten that. The new brush set will come with new crimp-on connectors, so don't worry about that. As you see, the old brush on the left, the new brush on the right. You can see how much of it is worn away. This compressor is used every day. I think it's like 2 or 3 years old. No, maybe 3 or 4 years old now. So we're going to put the brush in. Keep your wire to the opposite side of the spring. Let the spring off, and now the brush is in contact with the commutator. Just kind of making sure everything's going to line up and we're free and nothing's bound or stuck to make sure brushes feed correctly. Just double checking all the fittings. Going to grab a metal crimp-on ring out of the envelope, the baggie. So now I'm going to put the crimp-on ring over the stranded wire, and I'm going to slide it over the commutator wire. And I'm going to kind of hold it. It wants to slide around. It's going to be kind of a challenge to get it and keep it in place. At least for me it was, especially with my big fat fingers. Look at those sausages putting that on there. So now I've lost my crimpers, which are right there, because of course you lose your tool as soon as you set it down. And I'm going to crimp it with, of course, the non-insulated connector to put a good dent in it. So we're just getting everything lined up. Checking our connection, squeezing, crimped. I solder these at the end. I don't have video of it. You'll see me flux it. I didn't have my camera on when I came back. I had to leave for an errand and come back. But I do solder these on to make them more secure. So now we're doing the bottom, same procedure. Gonna push the brush back with that pick. It's like a 90-degree pick. I got a straight pick in my other hand, or in the same hand now. Now it's in the other hand, and we're going to pull the spring back, which is kind of fun. Doing this out back of my mother's restaurant because it just happened to be where I was that afternoon when I got this in to fix. I like to, change up the scenery. So there's the spring. It's kind of like a watch spring. It's real fine. You can replace it if it breaks. I don't have the part number for it though. And there's my second brush. I'm pretty sure on this one I learned my lesson. I just cut it straight off without even messing with it. Yep, cutting it straight off. Just close as I can to the original crimp-on connector. Nope, I'm trying to save this one too, because I don't learn my lesson. But in reality, just cut the thing off. You're going to save yourself just gobs of grief and effort. And there we go. I just cut it off. Threw it away. I'm going to grab the next brush. Again, this brush is going to face with the wire to the... Not this way. I almost screwed this up. And I go, wait. Pull that back out. I flip it over. Because that copper wire has to be on the opposite side of the spring. Slide it in. Put my copper wire there. I'm holding the wire for the brush so the spring doesn't snap and fly it in there and crack it. I don't know if that's a procedurally good idea to do, but I don't want to break anything. So I'm trying to slow that spring's return down a little bit. Okay, now we're doing the bottom ferrule. Everything's easier the second time, so we're on it. It's in there, focusing, and getting the crimpers. And eventually I might get to crimping it. I should have edited all this out, but this is funnier. You can watch me struggle with it. Here we go. And he goes, and the crimp, and it's good. Wait, more squeeze, and good. Okay, so now we're going to put some flux on these connectors. And I got a little butane powered soldering iron over there. I don't think you can see it. We're just going to solder those ferrules, that braided wire, and the enamel coated wire to make sure we have a good solid electrical connection. And of course I'm using the good old stuff, the 6040, the good lead solder. And that's my soldering iron. Just a little butane powered one. I love that iron. It's the handiest thing in the world, especially if you're working on cars or outside. There's my dad there. We got it all soldered. We're going to give it a dry run. He's going to plug it in. I'm going to take a step out of the way of the belt in case it flies off because there's no guards on it. Start it up. We're getting a little bit of sparking. Nothing uncommon for a brushed motor. But we're going to just clean that commutator up just because it looks like crap. So I'm going to go get some sandpaper. I think I got like 320 grit because it happened to be the finest stuff I had on hand. And the other side is the reduction with the belt drive makes it so low that you can, wherever you are in the setup, you can just crank that fan and clean up the commutator. I was grabbing that, I realized I could just spin it with my finger in victory. Yeah, I cleaned up pretty well. There was no major pitting in it. In the book, if it's pitted badly, you have to replace the whole compressor motor. So there's really no reason not to try to save it because you can't buy replacement parts. As far as a whole motor, you can buy a whole motor, but at that point you've bought a whole compressor. So I'm blowing it out using the high powered air that is my lungs. We're going to give it a whirl again. It's still going to spark, but at least now it's going to run a little smoother. To be a little less chatter in the brushes. As you see, the brush sparks. The reason why you don't have flammable items by electric motors. It's running just fine. We're making air, so we're going to call that good. Going to put the covers on it. The covers are a twiddly little thing because they barely fit underneath these rails, so you kind of gotta just kind of push them and they'll pop into place. And then there's an alignment peg in there somewhere, and I think it's on the shorter side. You just fiddle with it for a second. There's some snaps. It'll snap together and it'll be in the right place once it snaps together. At least mine went into the right place once it snapped together. There we go. We're snapped in there. And it's just screws. These are all Torx screws on this. I highly recommend, if you don't have it, get a long set of Torx screwdrivers. I didn't have mine with me, so I have a long Torx bit with an extension on my impact driver. And I'm going really easy on these. It's just plastic. It's not like a machine screw. It's plastic into plastic parts. So I'm just, lightly touching. There's a screws already stuck in this hole. And I don't know if I show the whole bit of it, but it fights me. I gotta get my flashlight. I gotta look in the hole. I gotta get the drill on the screw. It's just kind of not straight in that hole, but once I get the screwdriver on it, it falls into place, and I just zip it in, and we're there. Everything's getting pretty solid now. There's one more screw in the front. This is where you need a long screwdriver because it goes way in there. And there's just all the compressors, like pressure control and hoses are in your way. And then the last thing we do is we're going to put the cover on it. Cover's pretty straightforward. 4 screws in the top, 2 in the front. If you ever need to change the, I guess that'd be manifold with your pressure regulator, take these 6 screws off, take that whole lid off, and it's really easily accessible to you. So we're just grabbing them all. This is my father's compressor. He's a general contractor, and this thing gets the living crap beat out of it on a daily basis. Ended up not working. They were like, hey, you take a look at it? I went, sure. Because I fix all kinds of tools. I love fixing tools. I fix everything. As you kind of figured out from the videos on my YouTube channel, I like to tinker with everything. And we're going to get the last of the screws in this. You know, and I'm recording this now. This is like months later. This thing's still just fine. I'm going to throw the wheels on it. Little plastic parts kind of pop out of these. A little what is it? It was all-purpose pipe adhesive from the plumbing section. Is really good for gluing the pieces together so that the wheels don't fall apart on you. And then they just got some really simple like spring clips, I guess you'd call them. And we just pop those on with a pair of needle nose pliers, just so you don't smack your fingers. And now I'm going to help him get this thing down off the grill I got it sitting on. And that's pretty much it for the repair. He's going to tie it up and put it back in his van. I'm going to stop here. Just like, subscribe, comment, and have a good day, guys. Thanks.